I think we all agree that the Firefly is just super annoying to fight. So what is the best way to take this down? And are there other ways we can take down the big Arc faster? The game's evolved, things have been nerfed, so what are the best new ways to deal with the Arc and Arc Raiders? Obviously, if you have a Wolfpack or a Deadline, then you're sorted, but what if you don't? Well, let's talk about those situations, starting with the Firefly. There are a couple weak points on the Firefly. Firstly, the thrusters, just like the Hornets, will be destroyed if you can get an angle on them. We'll talk more about that in a little minute. There's also the yellow canister. Now, if you're able to shoot that a few times, it'll explode, causing fire damage to the Firefly, which will kill it pretty quickly. Trouble is, if you do that up close, then, well, you're going to get torched a little bit, and it's just a little bit messy. Sure, if you have the jump on the Firefly, then shooting for the canister can be a good strategy. But try it with something with a big bullet, like the anvil. All heavy weapons have larger bullets. Then what usually happens is the bullet hits the armor first, and that completely stops the bullet from hitting the thruster. Something with multiple projectiles, like the Venator, will do this better. But even still, it's kind of finicky to aim for this little canister regardless. So there are quicker ways to deal with the Firefly. The most common method is to shoot down the armor plating and then shoot the thruster once the armor plating is destroyed. As long as you have a moderate arc armor weapon or higher, this won't be that difficult. And with an anvil, it will take 4 shots to take down a Firefly. As long as you use the first shot to break the armor, the next to shoot the thruster off, and then you repeat for the second thruster, the Firefly will come crashing down to the ground. But there is a faster way to do it, with just 2 bullets actually. If we take a closer look at the Firefly, the way the armor protects the thrusters is it's basically going to stop you from hitting it if you're shooting from the same height level. However, if you're above the Firefly or below it, you can get a cheeky angle on the thruster without having to deal with the armor plating first. So if you are above the Firefly, you can easily shoot the back thrusters. And if you're below the Firefly, you can also get an angle on the back thrusters or even the front thrusters, meaning 1 shot for each thruster. So it's just 2 shots to take the Firefly down, as long as you just angle yourself in the correct way. You can also do the same for the Hornet, and this is the fastest way to take down the Hornet as well. If you just crouch down as it's flying, or wait for it to attack you and it will sort of tilt itself upwards, you can take down the Hornet in 2 shots. And you can also do the same with the Wasp. The Wasp usually takes 3 anvil shots to destroy, but if you shoot its back, it has a critical point on its back, and it's only 2 anvil shots. Or just shoot it next to a wall and it's 1 anvil shot. Now, what about the Comet? We all know where the weak spot is. Once you shoot it and it goes into aggro mode, it will open up the inner core, and you want to shoot that inner sphere to do the most amount of damage to it, and that's the fastest way to destroy it. Trouble is, as it's rolling towards you, trying to hit it with an anvil almost feels impossible at times. Any weapon with a fast fire rate is going to be better because it's harder to hit your shots with a slow fire rate weapon. I'd recommend the Renegade, but there's actually a second reason why having a fast firing weapon like a Renegade or even a Kettle will work out better than the Anvil, and I'll show you that now. Light, medium, and heavy weapons don't just determine the arc armor penetration. They actually have different bullet projectile sizes, and this is important. I'll demonstrate why that matters. First, let's shoot with a Kettle. Then, we're going to shoot with the Renegade next to it. And then we're going to pull out the Anvil and shoot that. Now, if we get closer, you can see what's happening here. This is the size of a Kettle bullet. This is a Renegade bullet, and this is an Anvil. Now, let's just visualize something here for a second. Let's say this white part is the core of the Comet. That's what we need to hit to do max damage. Whereas the yellow part is the outer armor, which is tougher and takes more shots to destroy. Now, if we need to aim for this tiny slit here, there's a problem. The yellow part is sticking out further than the inner core. So if even the slight edge of my bullet hits the yellow part, instead, it's going to do damage to that instead of the inner core. Now, if I were to shoot a Kettle on this white part, not a problem. And if I were to do the same with a Renegade, it's probably going to be able to hit it as well. If I bring out an Anvil here, and I try and aim for that inner part, look at what happens. The kettle is going to have no problem making sure that it's pinpoint accurate and doesn't accidentally hit the outer armor, whereas the anvil is going to have the highest chance of hitting that outer armor, and the renegade, well, it's also going to struggle a little bit. Now, if you're really good with aiming, this won't be a problem. But if you struggle, then something like a kettle may end up working better for you. If you can hit your shots though, and you're able to stay accurate on that tiny little core, then the Renegade's probably the best choice. Now, what about the Rocketeer? What's the best way to deal with that? Well, it's certainly the Hornet driver. If you haven't tried it already, the Hornet driver can disable the thrusters, which will send it flying down to the ground, and it will either blow up in one hit or at least take a lot of damage. A lot of people struggle with this one, so we need to go to the drawing board to explain how to hit the Hornet driver so it disables the thrusters. The number one most important thing, you need to be within 30 meters of the Rocketeer, and you can ping it to get a live ping of when you're close enough. Otherwise, you're just going to be too far away. You're not going to be able to throw this effectively. Now, what a lot of people do is they throw it at the Rocketeer. And what's going to happen there is essentially the Hornet driver will zap the Rocketeer gun, and the gun will be disabled temporarily instead of the thrusters. Another thing people do is try and throw it to the side, and it might come into contact with one of the thrusters, but that's not going to do a good enough job. The thing we need to understand with the Wasp driver is it has a radius around it, and if anything is in that radius whilst it's in the air, that will trigger the Wasp driver to electrocute whatever part it's closest to. So if we throw it towards the Rocketeer, it's going to end up hitting the rockets first. If we throw it at the side, it's only going to hit one of the thrusters. What we need to do is throw it up in the air above the Rocketeer so that when it lands down with gravity, the thing it first comes into contact with is multiple thrusters at once, which will disable multiple thrusters, sending it down to the ground. So we've got to do a throw like this. It's got to be up in the air, and it's got to land down so that when it finally comes into radius of the Rocketeer, it hits the right area. Okay, let's move on to the Bastion. I know a lot of people are drawn into the yellow knees, right? That's where the weak point is. But actually, there's a much faster way to take the Bastion down. In fact, there's two ways, depending on how brave you want to be. The first method, sure, break down one of the yellow knees and then run to the back of the Bastion and start shooting the yellow canister. If your weapon has a high enough damage per second, you'll be able to break the yellow canister, which will then destabilize the Bastion for longer and expose its inner red core. You can then shoot that to completely destroy the Bastion. This is going to work with weapons like the Torrente, the Volcano, the Tempest, weapons that have large magazine sizes and a high DPS. It's not going to work with the Anvil or the Renegade or something like that. Now, the next method is to ignore all of the knees, ignore the legs, ignore the armor, get up on height, and focus on this red part here. This is a weaker, softer armor plating than the outer armor on the Bastion, and shooting this can destroy the Bastion very effectively. In fact, even just using like a Stitcher, you can kill the Bastion using this method. Using something like an Anvil or Renegade is going to work perfectly, or bring like 20 impact grenades and it will be destroyed fairly fast. Next up is the Bombardier. Fun fact, did you know you can shoot the missiles whilst in the air and they'll explode, which can save you from some pretty dangerous situations. Honestly, I would just suggest getting a deadline. I know this whole video is about trying to do Arc without the Deadliner Wolfpack, but the Bombardier is a really slow, sluggish fight because it's just going to keep bombarding you with missiles, and it's going to be hard to peek in and out and get your shots off. If you really need to take it down though without a deadline, my best suggestion, bring some Seekers to get the spotters down first. That makes it a lot easier to shoot the Bombardier. Otherwise, it's going to hit you with pinpoint accuracy. Now, the Bombardier's armor is basically the opposite to the Bastion's. Whilst the Bastion's armor is weaker in the middle, the Bombardier's armor is stronger in the middle, and the outer armor on the Bombardier will come off really quickly. So you can break that off with a heavy arc armor penetration weapon, and then just unload as much ammo as you can into the center, and that will do as much damage as possible to take it down quickly. Finally, we have the Leaper, and as boring as it is, there's not really any effective way to take this down anymore, besides just unloading a bunch of bullets into its eye. The Trailblazer and Blazenade just don't really work so well against it, so yeah, just bring a heavy arc armor penetration weapon and fire away. Pretty boring fight, and there's nothing more to it, unfortunately. And that's it. Hope you found this video useful. If you did, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheerio.